It has been said that amphibious assaults are the hardest of all military operations to coordinate. They need such fine control and such a large degree of coordination that it is only the top-tier powers that have the ability to even attempt them seriously, let alone pull them off. The two nations that have made by far the most amphibious assaults during the past century are the United States and United Kingdom. From the great assaults of World War II to the recent 400-mile amphibious assault on Afghanistan, both countries have been at the forefront of developing amphibious assault doctrine and shipping. The history of the specialist amphibious assault craft really begins during World War II. Prior to World War I, amphibious assaults had taken place using conventional boats. The amphibious landings of World War II showed the tremendous costs of this type of operation in the face of modern weapons, especially the machine gun. It was only the recently formed US Marine Corps that saw the need for development of amphibious assault doctrine during the intervening war years. By the late 1930s, concrete plans were beginning to form to build the first really specialised amphibious assault ships. These concepts and vessels were tested in the Pacific and during the coastal invasion of Italy from mid-1943, initially at the port of Salerno and then later Anzio. The assault saw the first uses of the LST, or landing ship tanks, in battle. These vessels allowed for armoured vehicles to be directly dropped onto the shore to provide their offensive power immediately in support of the troop movements. These groups of specialised shipping can be divided into two types, basically described as ships and craft. In general, the ships carry the troops from the point of origin to the drop point for the assault, and the craft carry the troops from the ship to the shore. Generally, amphibious assaults take place over short distances, though they can also involve the shore-to-shore technique, where landing craft go directly from the origin to the assault point. The landing ship tank stands out as a significant technological leap. As the name suggests, it is a specialised type for getting tanks ashore. Unlike the other larger shipping, LSTs could beach and discharge directly onto shore. The tank landing ship was created and refined during World War II to support amphibious operations by carrying significant quantities of vehicles, cargo and troops directly onto an unimproved shore. More than 1,000 of these ships were laid down in the United States during World War II. From their combat debut in the Solomon Islands in June 1943 until the end of hostilities in August 1945, the LSTs performed a vital service in World War II. They participated in the invasions of Sicily, Italy, Normandy and southern France in the European theatre, and were an essential element in the island-hopping campaigns in the Pacific, which culminated in the liberation of the Philippines and the capture of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Throughout the war, LSTs demonstrated a remarkable capacity to absorb punishment and survive. Despite an irreverent, large, slow target badge, which was applied to them by crew members, the LSTs suffered relatively few losses in relation to their numbers and operations. Of 1,051 actually constructed, only 26 were lost due to enemy action, and 13 were the victims of weather, reef or accident. The Marines were also the first to demand a tracked amphibious tank to support their landings. Previously, armoured vehicles were required to be fitted with flotation equipment in order to reach shore. The Alligator series of fully tracked and armoured vehicles first saw action in the landings at Guadalcanal in 1942 and were still in use during the Okinawa landings at the end of the Pacific War in 1945. Subsequent development over the years saw the Alligator develop into the current amphibious assault vehicle, AAV, designation AAV-7A1, formerly LVT-7. The AAV-7A1 is a fully tracked amphibious landing vehicle manufactured by FMC Corporation and is the current amphibious troop transport of the United States Marine Corps, and is also operated by other forces of many nations. It is used by the USMC Amphibious Assault Battalions to land the surface assault elements and their equipment in a single lift, and to conduct mechanised operations and combat support in the subsequent armoured operations ashore. The first Gators had a land speed of 25 miles per hour, though their water skills were a little disappointing, in that the water speed was only 2.5 miles per hour. Today's AAV has a top speed of 45 miles per hour on land and 8.2 miles per hour in water. The water propulsion is provided by two water jet thrusters positioned at the rear of the vehicle. These are diverted to achieve steerage. When the vehicles approach the beach, the propulsion is automatically shifted from the jets to the tracks, and the LVTs are immediately underway at full speed. Once the area has been reached, the hydraulic rear door is lowered and the Marines dismount to attack their objective. After the mission requirements, the AAV-7s return to the ships. Inside the dock, the controller guides the AAV onto the ramp and into the bay. The batsman is not dissimilar to the batsman on World War II aircraft carriers, using glowing batons to mark their approach adjustments. These batons are necessary in bright daylight from the gloom of the inside of the vessel's dock. Once the AAV is inside the docking ship, it is rotated on the turntable and then stored and replenished, ready for its next mission. Many systems on the LVT-7 are reaching the end of their useful life and will require replacement. The new Advanced Assault Amphibious Vehicle, AAAV, is in the development phase currently and is anticipated to be testing in 2006 and in full operating capability by 2012. The new AAAV will have a maximum speed on land of 45 miles per hour and water of 25 knots, achieved with retractable bow and chine planning flaps. During World War II, the experiences learnt in the field were well remembered in later operations. The extensive landings in occupied France during the D-Day assaults were almost brought undone, not by the opposing forces, but by the weather. In spite of extensive planning, the largest storm to hit the English Channel in 80 years caused more damage to the forces and actually threatened to derail the whole invasion. It was quickly appreciated that amphibious assaults were such complicated operations that a specialised flagship was needed, with facilities that a normal naval vessel simply could not provide. It was also realised that battleships, cruisers and destroyers could not necessarily provide all the fire support that an assault would need. Therefore, specialised shipping was developed that incorporated various direct and indirect fire weapons. These included guns and rockets. As part of the final barrage before an assault, the landing area would be plastered by these types of weapons. Then, small landing ships would ferry the men ashore in their thousands, along with jeeps and tanks. The men would board via scaling ladders after the craft had been launched. The landing craft then formed their holding pattern until the whole fleet was ready for the advance. In the meantime, the fire support from larger guns continued. These large American LCU 1610 landing craft vessels have both bow and stern ramps for onload and offload at either end, and can be linked bow to stern to create a temporary pier-like structure. Capable of carrying up to 400 Marines or 170 tons of cargo, here they are carrying older M48 and M60 tanks for armoured assault. Similar forces are maintained by many nations, where the Royal Navy are training with NATO in the region of Norway, which leads to the Balkans. The landing craft in use are so rugged, they are capable of returning to English shores on their own in 36 hours. As well as LCUs and LCDs, the Force also used Sea King helicopters in the assault and rescue role. These war games showed their worth when they were called on during the Falkland Campaign in 1982. The well decks aboard assault ships HMS Fearless and Intrepid can be flooded to allow the 4 LCUs to be launched or retrieved with their armoured cargo. The troops were dispatched from the 9 Sea King helicopters from HMS Invincible, the Harrier aircraft carrier. Once on dry land, the Marines then proceeded on a long march to the airfield at Port Stanley. Despite all the progress that was seen during World War II, there were still fundamental limitations in the types of coastline that were suitable for assault. Beaches had to be relatively free of obstacles and have the right tidal conditions and the correct slope. However, the development of the helicopter changed the equation fundamentally. The first use of helicopters in an amphibious assault came during the Anglo-French invasion of Egypt in 1956. The techniques were developed further by American forces in the Vietnam War and refined during training exercises. Today, the modern amphibious assault can take place at virtually any point of any coast, making defending against them extremely difficult. One of the most recent innovations is the LCAC, or Landing Craft Air Cushion. These large hovercraft greatly expand the range and conditions under which an amphibious assault can take place. Capable of operating from existing and future well-decked ships, they are used to transport everything available to the assault force, from ship to shore and across the beach. There are numerous advantages of air-cushioned landing craft. They can carry heavy payloads up to 75 tonnes, which easily allows for existing assault armoured vehicles. Existing landing craft have a top speed of only 8 knots, and the LCAC are capable of in excess of 40 knots at full load. Their payload and speed mean more forces reach the shore in shorter time, with shorter intervals between trips. The LCAC, like all hovercraft, rides on a cushion of air. The air is supplied to the cushion by 4 centrifugal fans driven by the craft's gas turbine engines. The air is enclosed by a flexible skirt system. No portion of the LCAC hull structure penetrates the water surface. The entire hull rides approximately 4 feet above the surface. Traditional landing craft with their top speed of 8 knots could only cross 17% of the world's beaches, and assaults were made from 1 to 2 miles offshore. The capabilities of the LCAC make more than 80% of the world's coastlines accessible to assault forces from well beyond the horizon. Its high speed complements a joint assault with helicopters, so personnel and equipment can be unloaded beyond the beach in secure landing areas. For 20 years, helicopters have provided the partial capability to launch over-the-horizon amphibious assaults. Now, with LCACs, landing craft complement helos in speed and tactical surprise, without exposing ships to enemy fire. LCAC is a dramatic innovation in modern amphibious warfare technology. It provides the capability to launch amphibious assaults from points over the horizon, thereby decreasing the risk to ships and personnel and generating greater uncertainty in the enemy's mind as to the location and timing of an assault, thereby maximising its prospects of success. It is also important to point out the LCAC propulsion system makes it less susceptible to mines and other assault craft or vehicles. The LCAC vessels are deployed from the LHA Tarawa class and newer LHD Wasp class assault ships. These new ships, a cross of aircraft carrier and assault ship, are capable of carrying 2 of the larger LCU traditional landing craft or 3 of the newer LCACs, which would supply up to 60 of the AAV amphibious assault vehicles. This class has become the specialised ships that are required to meet the specific demands of the assault forces. They are designed with facilities that a normal naval vessel simply could not provide. Not only do this class provide transport and a base of operations, but also the air support required for their specialist missions. Their air component covers a mix of up to 18 Sea Knight and Sea Stallion helicopters, Super Copper attack helicopters and anti-submarine warfare helicopters. The air defence and shore attack roles are also filled by the ageing AV-8B Harrier attack planes. The Harrier's ability to work from small ships and small clearings on land make them perfect for the tactical support of the assault forces. The AV-8's remarkable abilities proved their worth during the Falkland Island campaigns for the Royal Navy. The tiny jet flew attack and support sorties from carriers in weather conditions that would have grounded any other attack jet of its day. The replacement for the Harrier is a new thoroughbred fighter from Lockheed, the JSF, or Joint Strike Fighter. The JSF is being built in 3 variants for varying roles. A conventional takeoff and landing aircraft, CTOL, for the US Air Force, a carrier-based variant, CV, for the US Navy, and a short takeoff and vertical landing, STOVL, aircraft for the US Marine Corps and the Royal Navy. This aircraft was developed to take over the Harrier's role. So far, the JSF has commitments from the US Air Force, the US Navy, the US Marine Corps and the British Royal Navy. Pilots flying the F-35B STOVL version will particularly appreciate the smarts of the F-35. The pilot simply flies the plane with stick and throttle, with the software handling the intricacies of short takeoff. The pilot receives inputs from the F-35's electronic systems using an advanced cockpit layout and receives his visuals via a helmet-mounted display being developed by Vision Systems International. The performance of the F-35 matches and in some areas exceeds many of today's top guns. But the F-35 goes several steps beyond any of the top guns with stealth capability, increased range on internal fuel tanks, and it has state-of-the-art avionics. These features improve the operational effectiveness, supportability and survivability of the aircraft. The variant for use by the US Marines and the Royal Navy is perhaps the most exciting of the F-35 family. Like the Harrier jump jet, the Joint Strike Fighter has the ability to stop and hover in mid-air for vertical landings. Currently, the US Marine Corps and the British Navy use the Harrier to drop into locations where paved landing strips are short or unavailable. The Harrier has supplied a remarkable service over 3 decades, but it has some shortcomings. Engine exhaust from a Harrier's underbelly vents can kick up large pieces of material that can get sucked into the aircraft's intake, and this virtually chokes the engine. To improve on the Harrier system, Lockheed engineers fitted a lift fan just behind the cockpit. During flight, the fan is aerodynamically hidden behind closed doors that swivel open for landing. The jet's engine turns a drive shaft, similar to a car's drive shaft that spins the fan and pushes cool air from above the plane out below. This column of cool air increases the fighter's balance as it moves downwards and keeps dangerous engine exhaust away from the plane's air intake. The lift fan generates nearly 20,000 pounds of lifting power, and the downward vectored rear exhaust supplies an equivalent amount. The US Navy has ordered another variant of the F-35 for its carriers. Due to the large size of their ships, they didn't require STOVL, so they opted for a version similar to the A model. The most notable difference is that the carrier version has a larger wingspan. However, due to the small size of the British aircraft carriers and the fact that they are set up for Harrier jump jets, the British have ordered the STOVL version of the F-35. The cost of the plane is one of the reasons why the JSF F-35 has been widely accepted, but it is the projected operating costs that are also a consideration for buyers. The most current data predicts the JSF F-35 will cost 40 to 50% less to operate and support than today's Top Gun planes. Time has proven that amphibious assaults are the hardest of all military operations to coordinate. Their requirements of such fine control and large degree of coordination means that it is only the more substantial military powers that have the ability to successfully attempt them, let alone exhibit any true presence in the realm of sea power.